How can children continue living with the 500 years of genocide and live on with a brighter future?
Well, it's hard for the children of any generation to move on to a brighter future when you have a system of corruption. Let's look at from where we are now or from where we're at 100 years ago. You can look at from any time frame. When the adults are corrupt, the children will never know what they are dealing with, because corrupt adults will never tell their children the truth. They always create a false history. Just like in the non-native world, this is the reason why everybody in the non-native world knows you can't believe history, because it's his story. History is told by the one who is the winner. And the one is the winner is the corrupt one. So the children of this generation, especially if we're talking about here in Kahnawake, well, it's almost impossible for those children to find a path to the truth, to find out what the truth is, as long as they are under the adults that are controlling them. So, how then do the children, or do the people, get back out of corruption, get back to a righteous society? Well, we know that in our history there is a story that is identified as the time of the 7 dancers, where the children find out the truth about the elders and where the children separate themselves from those elders. Well, this is done in many ways. Of course, first off, in anything, you got to find out the truth. So for the kids today to restore our identity, to resist 500 years of genocide, to get back righteousness to our people, well, you're going to have to fight against yourself. You're going to have to fight against your parents. And I don't mean physically fighting. You're going to have to ask them questions that you know they do not want to answer. Questions that they can't answer. When you reach a point where you know that your elders cannot answer questions, then you know that your elders do not have, of course, they do not have the answers. But how do you get to that point? Well, many people will say to you, when you're asking them like stuff about our politics or about the great law of peace or of our culture or our history, many of the people will say, well, that's part of the great mystery. Well, they will say that because it's the mystery to them that they don't know. But within creation, under the Goa in the Longhouse, there is nothing that is a mystery. Everything is knowable within creation, because creation is a derivative of Sky Woman herself. Sky Woman is the design, the blueprint of creation. She is the Guyana Goa. She is law. So by knowing law, by reviewing law, by teaching yourself law, then you could easily determine what happened at the scene of a crime if you were not present. Like the way that an investigator could go to a scene of a crime and pretty much deduce what happened even though they were not there. So our children, or any generation, can do this, but to do that is to go against everything that you have been taught, to go against everything that you know, everything that you believe. And here in Kahnawake, it is very easy, because the belief structure of the people of Kahnawake is rooted in corruption. And as long as it's rooted in corruption, it is so easy to find the lies, find the untruths, the things that cannot possibly be true that has been perpetuated to you. The lies have been perpetuated upon you. So, if you are trying to find your way out of this, well, of course, the answers are within the Longhouse. The answers aren't anywhere else. And then you're going to say, well, okay, you might think that there's whatever Longhouses in Kahnawake. There's only one Longhouse. There's always only been one Longhouse in Kahnawake. And anybody who says they're Longhouse, it's not true. I've never seen you in the Longhouse. But your answers will lie in the great law of peace. And you will only find this within the Longhouse. Only the Longhouse people know the great law of peace. There are your answers.
What is the difference between the 3 different Longhouse here in Kahnawake?
Okay, well, the three different... Well, first off, that's a loaded question, because there isn't three different longhouses in Kahnawake. There's only one longhouse. There's always only been one longhouse. When I was a kid, the longhouse used to gather at Dominic Daibo's place, the late Sawadis Daibo's father's place. He had a little store. It was a laundromat too, I believe, with a back room where we used to meet. It was right by the Rice family, just down the lane from Waddy's Oze's. Yeah, we used to meet there. That was 1965, 64. But this was not the longhouse. You got to remember, 1964. This is just right after the Seaway was built. The longhouse used to be somewhere else, and only longhouse people know where that is. Anyways, but from there, the longhouse moved to where the late Sawadis' son now, I forget his name, cripe. But where the late Sawadis' son has his store, the Eagle's Nest, on 207. The longhouse used to be right behind his place there. And at the time, there was Mary Henhawk from Grand River. He was there along with the late Jake Thomas. Jake Thomas was their Handsome Lake guru, and Mary Henhawk was pretty much like his enforcer. So Mary Henhawk would go around to all the communities and say, hey, he's got to have Handsome Lake. Kahnawake was the only place that would not have Handsome Lake because it's a religion. And we said no in the longhouse. All the chiefs and clan mothers said no, but said if the people want it, they could have it, but outside of the longhouse. So they made another building on the other side of the 207 that was ceremonic and just a couple of people there. Nobody ever attended that place. But it was Mary Henhawk that used to come down and visit Sarah, and it was him that would come down and do the, what they call their, what did they call it? Their recital of their Handsome Lake Code. And anyways, so from there, from the longhouse there, it moved in 67. We built the new house at where the 207 is right now, the cookhouse there. I remember I was pulling, my brother Keith and I were pulling the brush out of there, and it was built on an existing foundation. And this is why the house split, because it should never have been built on an existing foundation, on a house that was already there. And that house was already dilapidated and abandoned. Let's see, in 67 it had to be abandoned probably around 1930, this house. So my brother Keith and I were pulling out the weeds, the brush out of there. And I remember Alan and Paul, they were sitting there around the fire. They were drinking when we were doing the foundation work to that house. And anyways, from there, that house divided in 73 because of the band council and their evictions. And from there, 73, well, we moved to my grandmother's, right across from the old radio station where the rink is. We moved into my grandfather's workshop, and we were there for probably about 4 or 5 years, and then the longhouse moved back up to our place here. We stayed there until 1987. 1987, we built the Mohawk Trail Longhouse. The majority of that money came from my uncle Tiny, Leonard Cross. He gave all of the money to build that house. The rest of us, some of us raised some funds, but it was really only a pittance of what my uncle gave. And so we were there for 2 years after my mother died in '89. This is when Stephen McCumber and the rest of them, but Stephen and his wife Winnie, because the house was on their property, that they basically stole that house. They they wouldn't allow my brother to come in to prepare the longhouse for the midwinter of 1989-90. Stephen had his carvings all over the longhouse, so they stole that building. Stephen got a free building. He was a crook. That's what he is. And then from there, they moved. We moved back up the hill here from 1990, and we've been here ever since. This is the only longhouse. It's the only legitimate longhouse ever since, because it's the only place where the titles exist. It's the only place where the Great Seal of the Confederacy, where we still have it, where we still have our original identification cards from the Confederacy that was being put out from the early 60s, which the crossing the border, I still do that to this day with those cards, where everybody else has to have their enhanced cards from the government, or their what do you call that, passports, Canadian passports. And so after that, in 1990, this is when the Mohawk Trail, this is when they became, when they moved in Handsome Lake. Jake Thomas actually brought Handsome Lake down in April of 1990, brought their so-called healing ceremony, making them Handsome Lake in April. And then it was just after that, a year or two after that, that the Band Council gave them the money to build their new house right across the street from Stevens, which is now their Mohawk Trail house. But these are not longhouses. These are basically just clubhouses. They're social organizations of the people of Kahnawake. They're not longhouses, because to be longhouse you have to function under the Gayanadasadago that the Ganawida, the founder of the longhouse, had established, that to be longhouse you must abide by the great law of peace. Now this is where you can easily identify who is a clubhouse and who is a longhouse. So this is the difference between these so-called houses, but it is just a confusion that is put there to take away from the minds of the people what the truth is in Kahnawake.